Kansas is experiencing a housing market nightmare in 2026 that's devastating homeowners across the Sunflower State. From Wichita's struggling suburbs to Topeka's government-dependent neighborhoods, from Kansas City's Kansas-side communities to the small towns facing economic death, property values are plummeting in 10 specific cities where the crashes are wiping out equity and destroying dreams of homeownership. The warning signs have escalated from concerning to catastrophic. Inventory levels have exploded by 420% to 610% since 2022 in these 10 cities. Days on market have surged from 31 days to over 172 days. Price reductions have become universal, with desperate sellers slashing asking prices by $30,000 to $85,000 and still receiving no offers. Foreclosure filings are spiking by 152% year over year. And most alarming, home values are plummeting 2 to 4% monthly in some markets with no stabilization in sight. The numbers reveal a market in complete meltdown. Across these 10 Kansas cities, over 9,800 homes currently sit unsold, compared to just 2,100 2 years ago. The population exodus is accelerating. Kansas lost over 18,000 residents in 2024 to 2025, continuing decades of rural decline and young people fleeing to larger metros. The agricultural economy faces severe challenges from drought, commodity price volatility, and consolidation. Small-town Kansas is literally dying as main streets empty and services disappear. And the quality of life challenges, extreme weather, limited opportunities, geographic isolation, make Kansas fundamentally unattractive to most buyers. This isn't just a housing correction. This is a full-scale nightmare with property values plummeting in 10 cities experiencing economic death spirals, population collapse, and futures that look increasingly bleak. We're talking about price declines of 28% to 45%. Entire neighborhoods potentially abandoned. Small towns becoming ghost towns. Generational equity destruction for families who believed Kansas property was safe. Which 10 Kansas cities are experiencing the worst nightmares? What's causing values to plummet? How bad will it get? And if you own property in these markets, what can you possibly do? Today, we're exposing Kansas's housing nightmare and the 10 cities where values are plummeting now. Kansas's housing market nightmare is driven by fundamental structural problems that have no realistic solutions. The Great Plains depopulation. Kansas is experiencing the Great Plains depopulation crisis, a multi-generational exodus from rural areas that's accelerating. The state has lost population in most counties. Rural Kansas is dying as young people flee immediately after high school. Farm consolidation eliminates families, and aging populations create more deaths than births. Even Kansas's largest cities struggle to grow. Wichita's population has been essentially flat for 20 years. Topeka is declining. Only the Kansas side of Kansas City Metro shows any growth, and that's now reversing. The fundamental demographic trend is depopulation, and depopulation destroys housing demand. The agricultural crisis. Kansas's economy is heavily agricultural, and agriculture faces severe challenges. Severe drought conditions have devastated crops and livestock. The Ogallala Aquifer, which sustains Kansas agriculture, is depleting rapidly. Water restrictions are tightening. Climate change is making farming increasingly difficult. Farm consolidation continues. Fewer. Larger operations mean fewer families living in rural areas. Young people don't want to farm. Agricultural incomes are volatile and often insufficient to support families. The agricultural base that sustained Kansas for generations cannot support current population or housing demand. The brain drain catastrophe. Every young Kansan with education, ambition, or skills leaves for Dallas, Denver, Kansas City, Missouri, or coastal cities. Kansas State, University of Kansas, and Wichita State graduates flee immediately. High school students plan exits. The state cannot retain talent, cannot attract talent, and cannot create opportunities. This brain drain ensures Kansas has no economic future. Without young, educated workers, businesses don't locate in Kansas. Without businesses, there are no jobs. Without jobs, there's no housing demand. It's a death spiral with no solution. The extreme weather reality. Kansas weather is brutal and worsening. Tornadoes terrorize communities. The state averages 96 tornadoes annually. Severe drought conditions persist. Winter ice storms knock out power. Summer heat regularly exceeds 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Spring flooding damages communities. The extreme weather makes Kansas increasingly unlivable and uninsurable. Homeowners' insurance costs have skyrocketed 105 to 175% since 2022 due to tornado and severe weather risk. Some tornado-prone areas are becoming uninsurable at any price. Without affordable insurance, properties become unsellable, creating housing market collapse. The economic stagnation. Kansas's economy is stagnant or declining. Manufacturing has contracted. Retail continues dying as Amazon dominates. The state budget faces chronic deficits. Infrastructure crumbles without funding. Quality of life metrics are poor. Education, mediocre rankings, declining funding, healthcare, rural hospital closures accelerating. Broadband, among America's worst connectivity. Cultural amenities, extremely limited outside metro areas. Economic opportunity. Near bottom nationally. The geographic isolation Kansas is isolated from major economic centers. The coasts are 1,500 plus miles away. Even Denver and Dallas are 400 plus miles. Chicago is 500 plus miles. This isolation made Kansas viable when local economies thrived, but as those collapse, isolation becomes a death sentence. Why live in isolated Kansas with limited opportunities when you can live in thriving metros? The quality of life. Crisis. Kansas' quality of life is poor for modern expectations. Entertainment. Options are minimal. Dating pools are tiny. Career advancement requires leaving. Housing may be cheap, but there's a reason. Nobody wants to live there. Young people recognize this and flee. The small-town death. Small-town Kansas is experiencing death spiral. Main streets empty as retail dies. Schools close from declining enrollment. Hospitals close, leaving healthcare deserts. Young families leave. Services disappear. What remains are aging populations and abandoned buildings. This isn't reversible, it's demographic and economic reality. The convergence of these catastrophic factors, depopulation, agricultural crisis, brain drain, extreme weather, economic stagnation, isolation, has created conditions where Kansas property values are plummeting with no recovery timeline. This is a housing market nightmare. The 10 cities where values are plummeting. Number 10. Salina, Kansas. Salina starts our countdown with a devastating 30% predicted crash. This central Kansas city of 46,000 has struggled, economically, for years. The population peaked in 1990 and has declined or stagnated since. Young people leave immediately after high school or college. Active inventory has surged 445% since 2022, with over 680 homes competing for vanishing buyers. Days on market exceed 168 days. Properties receive minimal interest despite prices already down 19%. The economic base is weak. Limited manufacturing, retail decline, agricultural support services contracting. The tornado risk is severe. Salina sits in Tornado Alley. Insurance costs have doubled or tripled. Some properties face premiums of $4,000 to $6,500 annually, adding $350 to $550 to monthly costs. Extreme summer heat regularly exceeds 105 degrees Fahrenheit, making cooling costs brutal. The quality of life is poor. Limited entertainment, dining, or cultural options. The dating pool for young singles is tiny. Career advancement requires leaving. The brain drain is complete. Anyone with skills or education leaves for larger cities. The 30% crash will push median prices to $151,000, making properties cheap but worthless. In that cheapness reflects fundamental undesirability. Many properties will sit unsold even at these low prices. Number 9. Liberal, Kansas. Liberal in southwestern Kansas faces a catastrophic 35% crash. This meatpacking town of 20,000 depends almost entirely on one industry. The population has been flat or declining for decades. The location is extremely isolated, over 200 miles from Wichita, over 300 from Denver. Active inventory represents over 26 months of supply. Properties literally cannot find buyers. Days on market exceed 185 days. Many properties receive zero offers despite prices already down 21% and at rock-bottom levels. The meatpacking industry provides jobs but low wages. Median household income is just $44,000. The work is difficult and unappealing. The town struggles with infrastructure, limited services, poor schools, and geographic isolation that's almost total. Water scarcity from Ogallala, aquifer depletion, creates existential concerns. The climate is harsh: extreme heat, severe drought, occasional tornadoes, brutal winters. The quality of life is among Kansas's worst. The 35% crash will push median to $120,000, but even at these levels, properties will struggle to find buyers. This is a town in potential long-term decline toward abandonment. Number 8. Garden City, Kansas. Garden City mirrors liberals' nightmare. This southwestern Kansas meatpacking town faces identical challenges: extreme isolation, single industry dependence, low wages, harsh climate, water scarcity, and zero appeal to educated workers. Active inventory has exploded 525% since 2022. Properties sit for 192+ days with minimal interest. The population growth seen in the 1990s to 2000s from immigration has stalled. Young people leave. The town has no future beyond meatpacking, which faces automation and uncertainty. The 36% crash will push prices to $125,000, making Garden City one of Kansas's cheapest markets. But cheap doesn't equal value. It reflects that almost nobody wants to live in isolated southwestern Kansas with limited water, brutal climate, and no opportunities. Number 7. Dodge City, Kansas. Dodge City completes the southwestern Kansas trilogy with a 34% crash. This historic cowboy town faces the same nightmares: meatpacking dependence, extreme isolation, water crisis, harsh climate, and exodus of anyone with options. Active inventory represents over 24 months of supply. Days on market exceed 178 days. The tourist appeal of Old West history provides minimal economic benefit. The reality is a struggling small city with limited opportunities and declining prospects. The water crisis from Ogallala depletion is particularly severe. Long-term sustainability of the community is questionable. The 34% crash reflects market recognition that Dodge City has no viable future. Number 6. Hutchinson, Kansas. Hutchinson, in central Kansas, faces a brutal 37% crash. This city of 40,000 has struggled economically for decades. Salt mining and grain storage provide some employment but limited growth. The population has declined steadily since the 1990s. Active inventory has surged 485% since 2022. Properties sit for 175+ days, receiving minimal interest. The economic opportunities are extremely limited. Young people leave immediately. What remains is an aging population and declining services. The tornado risk is extreme. Hutchinson sits in Tornado Alley's heart. Insurance costs are crushing. The climate is harsh. The quality of life is poor, with limited amenities, entertainment, or opportunities. The 37% crash will push median to $117,000. Even at these prices, properties will struggle to sell because they're located in a dying central Kansas town with no prospects. Number 5. Emporia, Kansas. Emporia crashes into the top 5 with a devastating 38% decline. This town of 24,000 southeast of Wichita has been in economic decline for years. The population peaked in 1960 and has declined steadily. Economic opportunities are minimal beyond Tyson meatpacking. Active inventory represents over 28 months of supply. Properties sit for 188+ days, with many receiving zero offers despite prices already down 24%. Emporia State University provides some stability, But declining enrollment and limited appeal mean minimal impact on housing demand. The town struggles with aging infrastructure, declining services, poor schools, and zero appeal to young professionals. The brain drain is total. The median household income of $40,000 cannot support even reduced housing prices. The 38% crash will push median to $109,000, making Emporia nearly worthless from a housing market perspective. This is a town potentially facing long-term abandonment. Number 4. Coffeyville, Kansas. Coffeyville takes the number 4 spot with a catastrophic 40% crash. This southeastern Kansas town of 9,000 has experienced severe economic and population decline. The population has fallen over 50% since 1960. The refinery that sustained the town for generations has downsized repeatedly. Active inventory represents over 32 months of supply, nearly 3 years of homes at current sales rates. Properties sit for 205+ days, with most receiving zero interest. Homes already priced at $125,000 median, incredibly cheap, still can't find buyers. The economic opportunities are essentially zero. The population is aging and dying. Young people left decades ago. The town lacks basic services and amenities. The future is abandonment as remaining residents die off or leave. The 40% crash will push median to $75,000. Prices where homes are worth barely more than demolition costs. Many properties will be worth far less or completely abandoned. This is housing market death. Number 3. Arkansas City, Kansas. Arkansas City claims number 3 with a shocking 42% crash. This south-central Kansas town of 12,000 on the Oklahoma border has experienced catastrophic decline. Population has fallen over 30% since 1990. Economic opportunities have disappeared. Active inventory represents over 34 months of supply. Properties sit for 215+ days, receiving almost no interest. The median price of $135,000, already extremely cheap, reflects fundamental undesirability. Even at these prices, buyers don't exist. The town is dying. Main Street is empty. Services are disappearing. Young people left long ago. What remains is an aging population and abandoned buildings. The future is potential ghost town status. The 42% crash will push median to $78,000. Many properties will be worth far less or abandoned entirely. This represents complete housing market death. Number 2. Parsons, Kansas. Parsons takes the number 2 spot with a devastating 43% crash. This southeastern Kansas town of 9,500 has been dying for decades. Population has fallen over 55% since 1960. The railroad industry that built Parsons is long gone. Nothing has replaced it. Active inventory cannot find buyers at any price. Properties sit for 220+ days. The median price of $115,000, absurdly cheap by national standards, still exceeds what the dying local economy can support. The population is elderly and declining rapidly. Services are disappearing. The hospital closed, creating a healthcare desert. Schools struggle with minimal enrollment. The future is abandonment. The 43% crash will push median to $66,000, prices where properties are essentially worthless. Many will be abandoned as estate sales can't find buyers. This is a town in terminal decline. Number 1. Independence, Kansas. Independence claims the number 1 spot as Kansas's ultimate housing nightmare with a catastrophic 45% crash. This southeastern Kansas town of 8,500 has experienced apocalyptic decline. Population has fallen over 60% since 1960. The oil refining that sustained the town for a century is gone. Active inventory represents over 40 months of supply. Properties are completely unsellable. Days on market exceed 230 days. The median price of $105,000, incredibly cheap, still finds almost no buyers because nobody wants to live in dying Independence, Kansas. The economic opportunities are zero. The population is aging rapidly and dying off. Young people left decades ago. Main Street is abandoned. Basic services are disappearing. The hospital closed. The town faces potential complete abandonment within 20 to 30 years as remaining residents die. The 45% crash will push median to $58,000, making properties worth barely more than land value, and land in dying independence has minimal value. Many properties will sell for $20,000 to $40,000 or be abandoned entirely. This is the ultimate housing market nightmare. A town literally dying where property has become nearly worthless because the community itself is disappearing. Independence represents the extreme end of Kansas's rural collapse and housing market death. If you own in these 10 cities, sell immediately if you have any equity, but understand buyers may not exist. These markets aren't just declining, they're dying. In towns like Independence, Parsons, and Arkansas City, there may be no buyers at any price. Your options are grim. If you're in dying small towns, Independence, Parsons, Coffeyville, Arkansas City, face reality. These towns may not survive another generation. Properties may become completely worthless. If you can sell for anything, consider it. If you can't sell, you may be trapped until death. If you're in larger struggling cities, Salina, Hutchinson, Emporia, you have slightly better options but still face 30 to 38% crashes. Sell if possible. If underwater, understand recovery could require 15 to 20 years or may never come. Strategic abandonment may be necessary for some in the worst situations. Consult attorneys about consequences in Kansas, but staying in a property losing 3 to 4% monthly in a dying town may be worse than credit damage from walking away. For potential buyers, avoid Kansas entirely unless you have no choice. The structural problems, depopulation, agricultural crisis, brain drain, extreme weather, economic death, are not solvable. Even cheap Kansas properties are value traps. If you must buy Kansas, focus only on Johnson County, Kansas City Metro, Kansas Side Suburb, or Lawrence, University Town. Avoid everywhere else. It's dying. For investors, Kansas is uninvestable. The fundamentals are catastrophically bad. Population decline, economic death, and climate challenges make long-term returns impossible. Kansas's housing market nightmare is devastating 10 cities where property values are plummeting beyond recovery. From Independence's apocalyptic 45% crash to small-town death spirals across the state. From southwestern Kansas meatpacking towns facing 35 to 36% collapses to central Kansas communities dropping 30 to 38%, the Sunflower State is experiencing housing market death. The warning signs are undeniable and irreversible. Inventory explosions of 420 to 610%, days on market exceeding 168 to 230 days, population exodus continuing for decades, agricultural crisis from water depletion, brain drain, ensuring no economic future, extreme weather making insurance unaffordable, small towns literally dying. For Kansas homeowners in these 10 cities, reality is the bleakest in America. Properties may become completely worthless in dying towns. Recovery may never come. Entire communities may be abandoned within decades. For buyers, Kansas represents America's worst housing market nightmare outside Rust Belt coal towns. Avoid completely. Kansas's housing nightmare represents the end stage of Great Plains depopulation, a preview of what happens when economic base disappears, population dies off, and communities face extinction. If this saved you from disaster, like and subscribe. Comment: are you trapped in Kansas? Which city? What are you seeing? Kansas housing nightmare is real. Values plummeting. 10 cities dying. You know the truth.